finally, I will say something about Poe's influence on the symbolist movement in France. Poe died in 1849, and by calling him a symbolist, we are making a mistake since he was already dead once the symbolist movement was born in the early 1850s. But his influence was so heavy that critics usually call Poe one of the symbolists, along with Walt Whitman later in America and Charles Baudelaire and Arthur Rimbaud in France. Let me explain just briefly what symbolism actually is. I have a wonderful essay by Piotrowski, which I'm going to send to you, that explains the essence of symbolism, and this is just the gist of that essay. He says that in symbolism, there are three main factors that are involved: the artist's external world, the artist's internal world, and the thing that makes the bond between the two. So the third factor is the most important because it describes the link between everything which surrounds us with everything that is within us. So that magic bond is what most symbolists write about. To achieve this, to describe the bond between our external and our internal world, they employ some features such as the following. They associate various effects, and according to Poe, an effect a work of art has on you is the most important thing in poetry and in literature, generally speaking. They employ symbols. They set their stories in exotic locations. They stress our human passivity when we observe the world. And finally, they use some things to invoke synesthesia. I think the last thing is the most important because synesthesia means that you use your senses in a different way, not the way that your sense is accustomed to. For example, you can smell words, or you can hear colors, or I don't know. You get it. You use one sense to experience something completely different. Especially the first example that I gave you, to smell words. I'm going to give you one such example in Poe's story. This is an excerpt from the Philosophy of Composition, his essay in which Poe spoke about the effect. When indeed men speak of beauty, they mean precisely not a quality of being beautiful, as is supposed, but of an effect. So beauty itself, the quality of being beautiful, is not that important. It is the effect of your beauty on others that is the essence of beauty. Because there are people who are not actually beautiful, but they have that charisma within them that makes them beautiful. So it's all about the effect, nothing else, Poe says. The example that I'm going to give you about the synesthesia and the symbolist art in Poe's works is the story The Facts in the Case of M. Valdemar from 1845, the year when The Raven was published as well, in which Poe describes the effects of the early form of hypnotism on a dying person. Namely, the narrator is a mesmerist who wants to hypnotize his friend who is dying. The friend is M. Valdemar, and he accepts, of course, this offer. The goal is to see whether hypnotism will have any effect on a person who is dying. So while hypnotizing his friend Valdemar informs the narrator, the hypnotist, that he is dying, and finally he says, "I'm dead." So they're looking at a corpse. Valdemar is not breathing, he has no heartbeat, but still he's able to answer all of the narrator's questions. There is a doctor on site as well, and he checks for his life signs, and he says, we are looking at a corpse. I don't understand how he's still able to talk to us. So the two decide to leave Voldemar in this state for 7 months. During these 7 months, his body remains the same, but it has no heartbeat and he does not breathe at all, but he's still conscious enough to speak, although he is clearly dead. After these 7 months, they decide to wake him up so that he can finally die. And I have this excerpt here, which is from the end of the story. His whole frame at once, within the space of a single minute, or even less, shrunk, crumbled, absolutely rotted away beneath my hands. Upon the bed, before that whole company, there lay a nearly liquid mass of loathsome, of detestable putridity. So the instant they woke Voldemort from his hypnotic state, his body sort of shrunk and disappeared before their eyes. And the white highlight in this text, actually, this is my way of showing you how Poe evoked synesthesia, because you should be able to smell these words. Putridity is a very strong word. It means rotting, decaying, and it indicates a very bad smell that you can feel when you smell a dead person, a corpse. This is not the only story in which Poe dealt with arresting death. Another story, I have it on my previous slide, is The Oval Portrait, which deals with a very similar topic. It says that this oval portrait features a very beautiful young lady, and the background to the story is this. Her husband was a famous painter, and he locked his wife in a chamber, started to paint her, and many weeks passed as he was painting her. He was so obsessed with his own art that he didn't pay attention to his wife, and she didn't want to complain, so she just sat there sitting for him to paint her. And when he finished his painting of her, he said, "Wow, this is so good. This is life itself." Then he turned to look at his wife, and he saw that he was dead. She was dead, sorry. So basically, what he painted was not life. Beauty was not in her life, but in her death, because he had just painted a dead woman. I know this is quite even impossible to imagine such a situation, that a woman would die because she didn't want to complain. But it's fiction, and we should believe it as such, as only a fictional piece of art. So the point is that even in death, we can find some beauty, even though it is smelly, it is awful to see. Death is something beautiful that actually can be viewed as beautiful if we choose to view it in that way. Charles Baudelaire was obsessed with the way Poe used his symbols to describe both life and death. So I hope you memorized some of the words that we could see in this excerpt, because they reappear in Baudelaire's poem A Carrion, in which he describes the narrator came across a corpse, a carrion on the road, and now Baudelaire describes what he saw. The flies were buzzing on this putrid stomach, from where were leaving black battalions of larvae, which ran like a thick liquid the length of these living rags. So the words putrid and the phrase a thick liquid are borrowings from Poe, from the story, The Facts in the Case of M. Voldemort, because Baudelaire thought the use of these words will evoke synesthesia, and the symbols that Poe used actually describe death in a very grotesque way, one that we can smell and feel and hear and see, but the one that is very true to life. So I will end finally my discourse on Poe in these 7, I think, short videos by saying that Baudelaire translated some tales of Poe, and even though Poe, in his lifetime, was not so popular in America, he was mostly known as a critic and an editor, Baudelaire recognized Poe's worth while Poe was alive. And after his death in 1852, so 3 years after Poe died, Baudelaire said, "It is essential, that is to say, I desire, that Edgar Poe, who isn't popular in America, become a great man for France." he not only prophesied this for France, but also for Europe and the world. Because today Poe is globally hailed as the most important and the best romantic that America has ever produced. And I think that Poe's achievements cannot be stressed enough. He was not only an excellent poet, although he was not a born poet, he was a made poet. We still cannot deny the worth of his poetry, but he also wrote short tales. He was the originator of the science fiction genre, of the detective story genre, and there are so many other things that Poe delved into that I wasn't able to mention in these videos, but I hope during your creative assignment tasks that you will come across these things and maybe mention them so that we can learn even more things about this fabulous author, Edgar Allan Poe. See you in class when we're going to read The Raven.